everybody. Just wanted to recap our message from a couple weeks ago. We were out of town last week, just like many of you guys were with spring break. I hope y'all had a wonderful trip, and I hope you were able to have some good time together as a family. We were able to have some good time. We got to go see my grandfather, which is always good. He is 97 years young. He will turn 98 actually coming in April, so we're excited about that, but grateful to have some time with him, as I hope you had some time together as a family. Whether you were stayed close or whether you went far away, we hope you had a great week. Hey, just wanted to go back and recap, though, from a couple weeks ago. We looked at John chapter 11, and we looked at this moment of grief. John 11 is famous for a lot of us because we remember, 11:35, my favorite verse to memorize, Jesus wept. And, we kind of get down on that. We're like, ha, ha, ha. But really, there's a lot we can actually learn from that. And so we went back and looked at how we as Christians can handle grieving from John chapter 11. I love this story. If you remember the story, I'll give you the really brief recap. Jesus was really good friends with Mary and Martha and their brother Lazarus. He spent time with them. We don't have the full story, but from what we understand, he was very good friends with them. Matter of fact, Lazarus gets sick, and Mary and Martha send word to Jesus and say, look, the one whom you love is sick. Like, in other words, hey, your boy is sick. Your best friend is sick. You need to go and take care. You need to come and take care of him. And I love it because it doesn't make sense to us. We would think, hey, we get this and it's time to go. Let's go take care of them. We're going to fix them. We're going to heal them. It's going to be great. But if you know the story, Jesus actually says, hey, Lazarus is sick, but we're going to hang around for a couple more days. He waited 2 more days after finding out, making it a total of 4 days that Lazarus, unfortunately, was actually dead when he arrives. Doesn't make sense to the disciples, doesn't make sense to anybody else. Side note, Jesus was being hunted down by people. It was kind of a dangerous thing for him to go to Bethany where Mary and Martha and Lazarus lived. But yet Jesus goes there. Matter of fact, the disciples say, why would we go there? We could die. And Jesus said, well, our brother Lazarus has fallen asleep. Well, they're like, well, if he's asleep, he'll wake up. And he's like, no, look, y'all don't get it. He's dead. We got to go help him. And they're like, okay. So they go with Jesus to do that. They get to the scene, and Mary and Martha greet them and say things like, Lord, if only you'd been here, our brother wouldn't have died. And Jesus like, well, look, I am the resurrection and life, and he'll rise again one day. And they're like, yeah, we believe that, but like, if you'd just been here, or if you had done that whole like centurion thing where you just said the word and he was healed, then he would still be with us. And I love it because Jesus goes to the actual graveside, goes to the tomb, and it says that he wept. Isn't it funny that Jesus, who's getting ready to resurrect Lazarus in the next few moments, is crying over the fact that Lazarus is dead? We think, like, wait a minute, Jesus' perspective, like, you should know he's not really dead. He's only mostly dead. If you catch the Princess Bride reference, good for you. But the reality is Jesus waited the extra days to make sure everybody knew that Lazarus was, in fact, truly dead at that point in time. And so he goes and he crawls Lazarus out, and Lazarus comes out of the grave. Matter of fact, I love that little interchange there where they're like, he's been dead for 4 days. He stinketh. That's actually, I think, the King James version of it. But it says, he stinketh at this time. But he says, no, bring forth Lazarus from the grave. And he brings him out, calls him out, he comes out. They take off the grave clothes, and Lazarus is restored and renewed. And what a great opportunity. Listen, just a couple of notes from this past time. And I want you guys to catch this, especially if you've experienced loss or experienced grief. Help us remember how to deal with that as Christians. In 1 Thessalonians, it tells us we don't grieve as those who have no hope. Again, here we see this. There is hope. The hope is Christ. And so a couple things I want to point out from a couple weeks ago. One, the first one is that life and death are a part of life, right? Sickness and death are going to happen to us all. We were not intended or created to live here forever. Ever since sickness and death entered in the Garden of Eden in Genesis chapter 3, we've been dealing with it ever since. So even for those who walk with God, even for those who are close to God, there will be a day when we face death. Now, the hope of the gospel is we don't face eternal death and eternal separation from God, but that we will be restored and renewed to God, and that's the hope that we have. But as Christians, as believers, as people, the sooner we realize that death is part of life, the more equipped we are to actually handle it should it happen to us or to happen to a family member or a friend we realize that this is part of life. I know that's not a lot of hope, but the hope, again, comes in the fact that Jesus came so that we might have eternal life and move beyond the grave, right? So the first point was that death is a part of life, and sickness is as well. So if someone's dealing with cancer, if someone's dealing with death, don't be shocked and be like, I never could figure that anyone would ever deal with this. Look, we're going to deal with this. By the way, that's the reason why we want to take the gospel to the world, because everyone needs the hope that can only be found in Christ. The second thing is that God has a plan. We should trust it. When Jesus said, hey, we're going to hang out for a couple more days and then we're going to go, it didn't make sense to the disciples. Hey, I'm going to tell you something. God's plans don't always line up with our plans. And God's plans are greater and mightier and even bigger than we could even hope or imagine. But the reality is we don't always understand God's plans, and we're not always prepared for God's plan. But I want to challenge myself and challenge you to trust God's plan, to seek to walk by faith and not by sight. I know that's not always the easiest thing. It's like, oh, God's got a plan. That'll be encouraging for you. It's not always encouraging, but it's truth, and it's what we need to hear. We need to be reminded that God does have a plan. Side note, and something I challenge our students with, what do we say when people are grieving? What do we do? Do we just say, hey, this is all part of God's plan? It's awkward, right? It's awkward when people are grieving, and it's awkward when you don't understand what's going on. Hey, in those moments, we don't have to be like, God's got a plan. In those moments, we need to genuinely come and love people, be in their presence. Jesus could have healed from where he was, but he didn't. He went to Bethany, and he was with Mary and Martha and with all the people around them. Guys, listen, one of the things that we can do when someone is grieving is be physically present with them, or at least call them and talk to them. And you may say, I don't know what to say. You don't have to. Just let them know, hey, we love you. We're here for you. We're praying for you. Not in a trite way, but in a sincere way. And pray. Pray specifically that they'll have good remembrances. They'll have good memories. That they'll hear stories. One of the things I always try and get people to do is I say, hey, tell me something about your loved one. Tell me a funny story or something that you learned from them, or something that let them share something that they remember about the person that they're missing and longing and want to be back with at some point. Listen, one of the greatest things that we can do is just be physically present. And yes, you can listen. Don't feel like you have to fix anything, because you can't. But the one who can already came and lived, and it's the reason why we celebrate Easter this week. It's because of the hope of the gospel. The third thing that we challenge people with and that we reminded folks is to run to the God who weeps with us. In Psalm 34, it says that God is near to the brokenhearted. A few weeks ago, we looked in Psalms, and it was God's our refuge and our strength, a very present help in times of trouble in Psalm 46. Guys, listen, remember this. Go to the one who understands, who gets it, and who ultimately sent his son to die on the cross for you and for me, so that the grave would not be the end of the story, but that the grave would be the beginning. Just a couple words of encouragement. Like I said, when people are grieving, love on them. Be there for them. Meet some physical needs sometimes. That can be one of the greatest things you can do. Bring them a meal. They may not feel like eating then, and it doesn't mean like you have to sit there and stare at them and watch them eat. But just provide for some of the things that they're going through. One of the greatest things someone did for us was bring us a bunch of disposable plates and cups when my father-in-law passed away. That was one of those things where like, who even thinks about that? But we didn't have to do dishes, and it made it nice, and it was a very big blessing for us. Again, just think practical and think love. What would I want someone to do for me during this time? Then do that for them. That whole do unto others as you would have them do unto you, it's kind of a big deal and works in a lot of ways. Well, listen, I've talked long enough. Catch up on that. Go back and reread John chapter 11 and remember that Jesus came that we might have life. He is the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in him will be with him one day. Don't forget that. Listen, I hope you have a great Easter. Hope this is helpful for you, and we'll talk soon. Hope you have a great week. Bye.